levels of mediumship students that are out there so that you have a better sense for your own education. And also if you are looking to be a client of a medium in terms of their own study and practice and education, well, then this is the show for you. Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It also goes out on my YouTube channel and is uploaded to the Lilydale Assembly Facebook page. So you've got lots of different places that you can view my weekly podcast. And this is year 8 of episodes. So there are a lot of past
Congratulations.
episodes, thank you, that you can view to your heart's content, binge watch. People tell me that they do that all the time. I've had so many great guests and great topics, and you can really educate yourself regarding the topics of spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, and more. And you can find more about Lilydale Assembly that I'm associated with on lilydaleassembly.org. The summer program has started to be up on the website if people are interested. So I would refer you there so you can start getting into the classes that you'd like to and the daily events or more information about Lilydale, because they do help sponsor my show. And I also want to mention that when it comes to the mediumship levels that we're about to discuss, some teachers are a little different about that. But this is a discussion so that we can educate you. So if you're interested in pursuing your mediumship education, you can find the teacher that is right for you and the level that is right for you. And so with that said, we're going to explore what is the difference between a psychic and a mediumship link and so many other things with my special guest today, Laura Wooster. Hello, Laura.
Hi, Willa. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Yes. And those of you who don't know who Laura Wooster is, she is based in Massachusetts, but she sometimes travels, and she's an ordained minister with the Journey Within Spiritualist Church that is located in New Jersey. And she's also a certified medium with the Forever Family Foundation. And she does teach mediumship development as well. So we're happy to have her back on the show. We've talked about a lot of wonderful topics. I think last time we talked about love that never dies, and it was just in time for Valentine's Day. So if anybody wants to go back to that show or any of the others, just type Laura's name in there, and you'll be able to get to know her even better. So yes, I'm excited about our topic for today. I know when you and I were talking, we know how important it is to explain some of these facets and the differentiation between what is a psychic link, what is a mediumship link. So let's dive into that first.
Okay. And I apologize. My dog is talking. She's being very verbal behind this door. So I apologize for any yipping that's going on. Yeah, so psychic versus mediumship links, right? A lot of times people don't understand the difference. And very simply, what I explain to people when I sit with them for an appointment is a psychic link is more of looking at what's happening in their lives, within their present life, some insight around that, and also the potentials of where things are going in their life. And then also some insight with that as well. So it's more pertaining to the person I'm reading about life right now, life challenges, life strengths, all these things that they deal with life. With the mediumship, it's connecting to loved ones on the other side. Completely different thing. I've had a lot of people coming recently saying, I need some advice. I need a mediumship reading, and I want to talk to my people on the other side. And that's like, so then I have to, that's where the sort of there's an overlap there. And so I have to describe to them like, well, first of all, what type of advice are you looking for? And is the person that you're trying to talk to on the other side, were they well versed in that? And would they give you advice on that? And there's a difference between, and then if they come through with that information, that's evidence of who they are, not necessarily for the the sole purpose of the advice coming through. So by describing that, they go, oh, okay. So if someone wants advice, I'd rather go for more of a psychic connection rather than relying completely on mediumship or someone on the other side. But what are your thoughts on that, Willa?
So I do agree with the distinction between the psychic and the medium. It feels completely different when you're in a psychic mode than when you're in a mediumship mode, because with mediumship, you're connecting in with a spirit communicator. You're wanting to bring forward the essence of that spirit communicator with identifiers and evidence that helps the sitter or client understand that you're talking to their person. And as I explain to my students, it's really important that you know who your source is before you start talking.
Yes.
Because who is your source? Let's identify this person, and then they can bring through a message of inspiration, of comfort, or, hey, I wasn't very good about that, but guess who else I've got with me on the other side who would like to address this. And the thing to keep in mind is, especially because we are spiritualists, we understand that spiritual and natural law is an effect in everyone's life. And so we encourage people to understand they have personal responsibility. They have free will. They ultimately need to make the decision of how they're going to respond or what action they're going to take. As much as it's possible that those in spirit will offer their opinion, that is all it is, or what they would like to see. The future is not written, because you have free will and you're manifesting it in that way. So a person that works as I do, kind of more in the pure mediumship sense, would steer away from anything to do with fortune telling and future telling and those kinds of things, because we don't want to impede a person's progress in what they need to do and learn and evolve, especially as they're interacting with their people, their situations. And so that's a component of when you're a spiritualist medium that's very different from what you might see out there in the regular land. But some people do blur those lines, and you can see that they're dipping into the psychic and they're not staying in the mediumship level. And it does change the tone of the message and the information that's coming through. And I do try to tell people that sittings with mediums are experimental. You don't know what's going to come through. You don't know what's going to be offered in those times, what they might want to talk about when they're here, or who will show up. And so it's a very different function for it. But people really enjoy connecting with their loved ones in spirit again. It's wonderful when you have a trusted relationship, or you can feel that things have altered and they're a different person on the other side, and you can trust and rely on their support. And they could be one of your spiritual support team members as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, one of the things too that's really important, especially, I know you probably teach this with your students as well, is the importance of recognizing when the information coming through is a psychic connection versus a mediumistic connection. And I can feel the distinction when I'm working with somebody and I might feel insight coming in that's more intuitive. And I'm very clear when that comes in. I said, well, I know I've been talking to your dad. However, I just want to let intuitively, I just want to drop this in for you. Just know it's not coming from your dad. It's coming from more of my psychic connection. And I'm very careful about defining that. So they're not saying, oh, my dad told me I needed to do this because da, 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 da. And I'll never tell anybody what to do. Well, I always say that I'll never tell you what to do. But just to differentiate between those things. And I think it's so important, because we have free will, and we have to be very careful about that.
And I to your point, when you know that it's coming from you, because this isn't coming from them, this is coming from me, and then you can offer those things, but you still need to be careful that you're not diagnosing, prescribing. We can't be the fixers in all of this. And it's one of the things I do like about mediumship as well, is that while spirit can offer comfort and inspiration, and I see what's going on with you, they're very clear about not being the fixers, that the individual has to do that.
Exactly.
And when you drop into a psychic link, people can sometimes get into the fixer mode. Watch that in yourself, people who are who are viewing this, who are students, watch that in yourself. Like all of a sudden there's that little fixer mode in you that says, let me just bring this in. That's more of the psychic role.
Exactly.
Spirit is not a commanding. They might have intense personalities and opinions, but they know that they can't step on those the free will toes.
Exactly. And it's like, I think of it more of like, when a psychic connection, it's more of just an expression of the landscape that's in front of you and the potential, the strongest potentials. And at that point, it's like, if you don't like what we're seeing as far as the landscape, what are you going to do to change that? Like it's more of just showing that and just say, this is what I see. And if you want something different, it's time to make different choices. And I'll never tell someone what to do. And I say that like 100 times. I'll never tell you what to do. This is what I'm seeing the highest probability. Do you want something different? Is this something that you are looking to do? Is this something that you're working towards? And things like that. So, and that's not mediumship. That's a psychic connection. But mediumship, like you said, it's more of just letting people know that they're here. They're still present with you. They can't always offer advice. They can offer opinions if that was part of their being, their personality,
their wheelhouse of
exactly
what they were good at. Yeah.
Right. But that is primarily, they bring that forth to show evidence that this is actually them, not to direct your life. So, so there is a strong distinction there. And I think it's so important. I know that's one of the things that comes up so much in the mediumship classes, with students will ask, how can I tell when I'm doing, I'm connecting psychically versus mediumistically, and I'm always working with them to get them to understand the difference. And once you know it, you know it. It's like you can feel it, and you work with it. And but getting to that point of feeling the difference and understanding the difference is, it's well worth the time to do that.
And it does take practice. I mean, this is a long game. You just want to say this up front to everyone. It's a long game when you're learning the distinctions, how spirit works with you. This is not an instant mashed potatoes.
Right.
You don't just add water and here we go. And it's good anyway, in my opinion. It's more of a process that you have to go through of spiritual unfoldment. And it does fine tune and bring more quality to your messages, so that you can be in a true trusting relationship with spirit and with your team that assists you in your mediumship endeavors. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And you're going to have your stumbles, you're going to have your trips, your falls, whatever you're learning from them, but you're going to have glorious moments too, where you're just like, I was in the flow of spirit. And we're going to talk about those in a little bit as we move through the distinction of the different levels. But I just wanted to say, when people are trying to make the distinction between the psychic and a mediumship link, sometimes they're worried about the imagination coming into play as well. So, because, you can make up a story. You absolutely can make up a story. And you're like, I was so convinced of my story. But the distinction in what's happening in a mediumship class is that you're paired up with people, and you're having to give information, and they're saying yes or no. They're giving you that clarification. And when you first are giving out a message, and you're like, oh my gosh, they understood. I didn't just make this up. They know who I'm talking to. Oh, this is so cool that I'm able to be of loving service to another person and provide communication in this way. And so that's what starts to unfold. And it's only through practice that you start to make the distinction between imagination, between the psychic link, and between mediumship.
Exactly. Yeah, you'll feel the difference. Yeah.
You do. And I think we should make that distinction of mediumship classes. It's not based in tarot or palm reading or any of those other kind of tools that people would use.
Correct.
You're working to build your skills, to build on your gifts, those spiritual gifts, the soul gifts that you've been given, but it's not based on using tools.
That's correct. Yes. And some people ask, do you use tarot? Like I use cards when I'm doing a psychic reading, right? And not all the time, not as much as I used to, but for mediumship, I never use cards for that. That's just not, it doesn't make sense at all, in my mind anyways. But yeah, and there's a distinction too about, like you had mentioned, the distinction between imagination and, because when we're in that space of learning, when we're becoming a medium, that it's hard to tell the difference between imagination, and because it's the same, all the things that where we see or we experience our own imagination is basically the screen that mediumship will use as well, or our spirit will use as well. So, but when we start to feel the difference, the subtleties of those difference, and we practice it over and over and over again, then you start to know exactly when you're speaking from your imagination versus not, and it becomes much, much clearer. I know that's something that new students struggle with quite a bit, which I understand. I was there. So
Yeah, we've all been there. Laura and I and many others have been through this very process, and it's very normal that you feel those ways. And I do say that intuition and imagination live in the same house. So
yeah.
intuition will use imagination to convey information, because we have to kind of get into that space of the envisioning and the expression of connection with other dimensions that go beyond what our own left brain has taken charge to tell us to survive through these moments of cultural interchange and everything. So that's very much an aspect of this.
Yeah.
And, so just to reinforce, it's not using tools except ourselves, because we become the channel for spirit, because that is the focus. Absolutely with this. Any other
And
points before we dive into the levels?
oh, and this is a point that came up in one of my classes this week as well, is that because we have to be so careful and mindful about our own stuff and how that can play into projection of information that's coming through, whether it be psychically or mediumistically. And I often say, you have to, if you have to think of mediumship development as twofold. And that one is your connection with spirit, but also connection with yourself and understanding your own stuff, right? Meaning that if you can't clear or be a clear vessel for spirit, it'd be harder to bring forth information that is clear and concise and truthful. Because if you're projecting your own stuff, or it's harder to bring forth messages that really are truly clearly from spirit. You project your own experiences, and not to say that those things don't come into play as far as what spirit will use to bring forth information. However, for example, there's so many aspects of this I can touch upon, but for example, I was talking with somebody about, so for example, if maybe you were a very sensitive child, and when you were very young and people told you, oh, you're too sensitive, to stop being so emotional, that over time, you learn not to be emotional. You tend to turn those things off, and you can become more, static. So, but then when you become a medium or you're studying mediumship, you have to be able to feel, so that you can understand the human experience. And if you're turning those things off, there's that stuff that you need to work on to be able to understand why you not want to feel what you want to feel, whatever reason that may be, and also to be able to speak as well. I know that I'm a very quiet person. I am not a talker. I had to learn to use my voice. So personal development goes hand in hand with mediumistic development, and you become a better medium by working on your own stuff and becoming stronger in the ways that you feel you personally need to do, and it'll show up in your mediumship. How do you feel about that, Willa? Do you think that's
Absolutely. That's what I reinforce with my students all the time, that you need to be working on yourself. The spiritual unfoldment aspect is extremely important. And I love Harry Edwards, who was a British medium. He always talks about how a medium needs to be of even mind.
Yeah.
So you need to be of even mind in your own life. It's less disruptive, because you're going to have to open up your mind, your body, your soul to this experience of mediumship communication. And you want to have a good baseline of what's you and what's someone else, and to have good coping strategies. And, I wasn't going to mention this, but I do have a video that people can find on my website. It's available during the month of February for coping strategies for empaths. So if you are
Good.
sensitive, if you are hypersensitive, if you are having trouble modulating those things and having healthy energetic boundaries, if you want to be able to do the work of a healer, of an intuitive or a medium, any of that spiritual journey that you're on, it can be really helpful to have those strategies in place, to know what you can utilize, and not just be at the whim of the wind,
Exactly.
the
That is
emotional
so
winds.
important.
For some people, they really need to go deeper into counseling and embrace what they need to on a therapy level, and be open to how spirit is helping to guide them to that help. And
Mhm.
and then, as you said, when you have a clearer filter, that's what you were alluding to. If you don't have all this other projection that you're putting out there,
Mhm.
then you can be a wonderful pure channel for spirit, so that you can
Exactly.
relay that essence evenly, beautifully, with sacred joy. And
Mhm.
it really is essential. But before we go into the levels, I should mention, uh, there are the clairs. We talk about the clairs:
Yeah.
clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsent, clairgustance, clairsentience, claircognizance, all these clairs
Yeah.
that you'll hear in mediumship development circles and classes. And for those of you who want to know what those are your soul senses. That's how you activate. It goes beyond your five senses. And I've got another great video that you can watch that I'll link in this post. It's the soul senses, so that you can understand what the clairs are before you get to a mediumship development circle, and examples of how those show up, how you see spirit, feel spirit, all of those dynamics. So it's a good foundational video that I did in
Mhm.
the past that is free, and you can access and view that on YouTube or Facebook. So just
Mhm.
so you have some good knowledge before you get into a class. And
Important.
even if you are have become better in the psychic uh, energy and doing readings in that capacity, it's important to understand how spirit would use those clairs. It's a
Yep.
different
Exactly.
understanding and feeling and energetic connection that's happening.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. And it's because it's same faculties, but yet very, they do use them very differently. And
So I want to
so
make sure those were resources that people have, that they can further educate themselves, because I'm all about the education, and I'm trying to help
yeah.
people find good quality information so that they can build on that. I
Mhm.
think it's time for us to talk about some of these levels. And
Yeah.
um, the way I like to divide it up is we have the
Mhm.
beginner level, intermediate. I actually split into lower intermediate and upper intermediate,
Mhm.
and then we have advanced, and then we have professional. And
Mhm.
we're going to step our way through those so that you have the viewers today have a better sense of those, the energy, the dynamics, what you're learning, what you're absorbing, what you could be focusing on, and those various levels. So
Yeah.
let's start it off with the beginner.
Yeah, so beginning level mediumship, that's someone who may have some idea of what the clairs are. Maybe they won't, maybe they don't, but they may have some ability or knowledge about that. But you may or may not be aware of when you're actually connecting with spirit. You might get a sense that you might be, but you're not sure. Some people who come in, I've noticed that they may be perceiving their own energy as spirit, which I
Mhm.
think is incredibly important to recognize the difference. Um, is that apologize my phone? I thought I turned my phone off. Um, and a lot of times people don't realize that they're actually um, they're sensing their own energy, and they
Mhm.
think it's spirit. And so I think it's so important to, it's one of the things, the first things to start to begin to recognize at the beginning level is that beginners also, you may not even know what questions to ask. You don't know what you don't know. um, and just you there, and also the understanding of what mediumship is may not be where it needs to be in order to proceed just in a healthy way either. I've had people come into beginning classes thinking that it's trance, or it's it's house clearing, or it's there's all these different, like, we sort of have to define it for them, at least in the way that we're teaching in our individual classes, what the context is of mediumship. For us as spiritualists, it's connecting with loved ones on the other side to prove the continuity of life. And not just connect with necessarily with spirit guides or angels. Not that we can't do that. I mean, I've done that myself, but it's for the context of this, for mediumship. That's what we do.
Exactly. We're focusing, as I explained to my students, we're focusing with intention that we're going to connect with that individual's closest circle of people. We're talking their immediate family, their immediate friends. We're not trying to talk to a family member of a friend, or getting into the great.
It does happen.
Occasionally. But when we set the intention with our spirit team that we're trying to focus in on the intimate people to them, the closest of their circle, because that's why they've come for mediumship reading. They're trying to connect with their parents, with a spouse, with their children, with siblings, with their dear friends. And that's what we want to provide is the reunion, the family reunion that's happening there. So as you said, it's not really focusing on spirit guides and angels. The thing to keep in mind is spirit guides and angels don't tend to be verifiable for most people.
Exactly.
Versus a spirit communicator that is one of their loved ones, like I've just described, we're of the immediate sense. Then they're like, oh yeah, that's definitely my mom. That's her personality. That's how she passed. That's how she would have expressed herself. Of course, she's giving you that information. Oh my gosh, I'm surprised she mentioned that. And
I forgot about that. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And it's not about reading someone's mind or anything like that. But I'm grateful that you mentioned that that's the distinction. The other thing I noticed that for beginners, they're having to, learn the clairs, as we said, learn how to interact with the spirit world in a healthy, energetic, boundary way. So that sometimes when they're beginners, they're like, they feel pillar to post about things, like it's starting to flood in on them. Or it's dribbly and they're not quite sure why. It's usually because they've shut down or they've let their rational mind take over. But also, as you're opening, you're becoming more sensitive. You're opening to feel spirit. You need to say, okay, I'm going to be on for the purpose of this class, for the purpose of when I am in meditation. And it's not a y'all come just because I'm taking a mediumship class doesn't mean that spirit is allowed to invade my sleep time or bother me when I'm with my family. All of that thing. So a lot of healthy boundaries they're learning as they're beginning to express messages from a spirit communicator. And usually, beginners are really learning how spirit works with them. And I usually step them through an experience that I use all the time, that my mom taught me, and it's what I do every time before I have readings for the day to set my energy up. So you want to know what your home base is so you can always get back to that space of the light and the peace. And so some of those things are what people are learning as beginners. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's setting intentions and recognizing where they are in the space. When they're ready to work, are they prepared physically? And and it also, like you said, setting the boundaries. I mean, how often have we heard people who are in a basic class and they go, I couldn't sleep all night. They were bothering me all night. And it's like, oh, well, this is part of beginning mediumship, is setting those boundaries. And don't be surprised too. And just like I said with before about, your own stuff versus mediumistic stuff. Don't be surprised when this starts to be reflected in personal, real, physical world relationships, where you start to recognize that you need to bring some boundaries in there as well. And it helps not only your own physical life here, but also your connection with the spirit world. So
Mhm.
it's pretty fascinating to watch the process as people go through that.
Yeah, it's a good point, and just to kind of reinforce this before we move on to the next level, when people are first starting out as beginners, it's like, I think there's a form. I think that this is a person, and it's very Picasso,
Yeah,
right? It's almost
exactly.
like, what am I seeing? I'm trying to
Purple.
what parts of myself.
Yeah.
And, usually you're starting to figure out what's 1 + 1, and you're figuring out addition and subtraction and all of those things. And, like how to start to play chopsticks on
Yeah.
the piano. So just to kind of give you a sense of what it is to be a beginner. And it's a beautiful place. There are times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I almost wish I could go back to the beginning again.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
not that there isn't more and to discover in this space that I'm in, but it just there's such delight. I love watching them. It's like they're they're like children that are learning how to paint, and they're covered in it.
Yeah. Exactly.
They've got a big old smile on their face.
Yeah, and it's actually like, so the things that I've been like, a lot of times too, what I love to see is that there's a recognition that they've always experienced this, but they didn't understand it for what it was.
Yeah.
And it finally like dawn is like coming, and it's like, and like, oh, so that's what that was. And like there's a purpose behind that. You've had this connection all along, and a lot of people don't recognize it for what it was. And yeah, it's just fascinating to watch the whole process for a lot of people, you
It
know.
starts to make sense. Things are starting to come together. It's going to add more questions, though. When you start into
Exactly.
it, you're going to end up with a lot more questions than you even started with.
I still have questions here.
Like, is this male, female? What did they look like? How did like, all the whole thing? You're going to learn what evidence really comprises, and how to interface with someone and get confirmation. And those things start to evolve in a class. And I do encourage people to be part of a weekly development class, so that
Yeah.
once a week you can align yourself, mind, body, spirit, for the purpose of connecting with spirit communicators, practicing this. You're going to have your good weeks, your bad weeks, about all of that as you learn and grow. But it's so great to have a community of mediums that you could connect with, a solid teacher that you could study with, that
Yeah.
is helping to steer the group productively and with that sacred light in mind. So you can usually find mediumship development circle class that's meeting on a regular basis through a spiritualist church or center. So definitely, you know, look into all of those, and reputable mediums that also run classes. And a lot of them have gone online through Zoom. That's how I teach, is online through Zoom. And I've
Yeah.
got students that are up from all over the country, and Canada, and sometimes other countries. And it's just really, really fun to watch that evolve. And I know you do too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing that it's such a good point is recognizing the importance of working as a group, you know. And I've had several people come to me over especially this year for some reason. It seems like people want to be more solitary, but I've had people come in and say, I want to mentor with you. And then I'll have a preliminary conversation with them. So are you sitting in circle? Are you doing anything? No. I just want to go. I just want to learn from you, and that's it. And I feel like it's more out of fear of not putting
Mhm.
themselves out there, but you have to be able to do that. And it's one thing to have a private mentor or someone working with you one-on-one. It's wonderful, but you've got to have the practice in a group scenario as well. You can't grow in a place of solitude. It just,
Exactly.
yeah.
You literally have to get into the water. And so you're in the pool, and your teacher is kind of like a lifeguard to some extent. And then you have other people that are in the water with you, learning and growing. And
Mhm.
it's a beautiful experience as you let that unfold. But you
Yeah,
books can only take you so far. And
exactly.
Talking to a person can only take you so far. You literally have to get in the water, learn how to swim, learn how to dance with spirit along the way and interact. And what's so great about circles is you got these great guinea pigs, as it were. You can interact
all these different energies. Yeah.
Well, I think we should move on into the intermediate zone. We're going to focus first on the lower intermediate. And by lower intermediate, what do you think people should be focusing on while as a lower intermediate student?
Hopefully, as you know, a lower intermediate student has been sitting in circle for an extended amount of time. Hopefully, it's probably several months to probably a year or more, most likely, and have maybe taken varied classes to kind of, and also in a first level intermediate student, they've also, which I would probably recommend, I mean, not everybody needs to do this, but are you taking like energy classes or anything where boundary setting, energetic boundary setting is very clear? That I know you may not be doing mediumship in an energy class, but the recognition of where your energy ends and other people's energy begins is so key, right?
Yeah.
So anything like that, anything that you can sort of define that for you and put that into practice. So so a little bit more of a beginner, maybe have taken some classes, maybe sat in circle for a year or so or more, and recognizing when they actually are connecting to spirit. So that's the key point, I feel. What do you feel with that?
That's a great way to nutshell it. I agree that they're really getting regular in their attendance in a mediumship development circle, starting to understand more of the energetics. By the time you are a lower intermediate student, you should really know what the clairs are. You should know your clairs. You should know and understand what is your dominant clair or clairs, and be working toward developing them further, to amplify, to magnify, to understand, to explore. And it should be exciting, and you're like a sponge to it. And as a lower intermediate student, you should be starting to get really regular in your hits and your correct information and your yeses from recipients. I also find that lower intermediate, they start to deal with ego and trust issues.
Yeah.
Right about then, they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's not just finger painting." I don't have Picasso happening. I'm seeing the light, and the impressionism is starting to come in, and they're Monet and Manet, and they're getting the forms and the distinction, and there's such beauty that's starting to happen in this. But they're really starting to establish trust with spirit.
Yeah.
And they're having to go past what's their ego. Like if they get a no, how hard did they feel that? How hard did just a little bit of a no send them off course? And there's such a deepening interest in developing their mediumship skills and developing that trust with the spirit team. And, as we said, regularly attending mediumship development circles, they start to go, this is a good place. And when I miss a week, I feel a little off. By then it sort of has kicked in on that level. And
it's dedication.
It's the dedication, the consistency, because as I tell my students, it's a combination for mediumship of right practice and right intention. And those are the two main ingredients to really be successful in your mediumship development. And so, those are some of the things that I would associate with a student who's a lower intermediate.
Yeah, same
Anything
here.
to add before we move on to the upper intermediate?
No, I think we covered it pretty well with that.
Yeah. And the other thing, I'm trying to put this in context of, I did mention impressionist paintings, the idea of the light and things are starting to form up, and they're beautiful. And it's also kind of, you've learned how to enjoy doing the scales on the piano, because a lot of things are doing it again and again and again. And you using the spiral approach of learning, because the more you get attuned to working with spirit in a similar way, you're like, oh yes, I see the patterns. Oh yes, I see the symbols. I understand how to interpret when spirit gives me this. So you can almost be ready to from memory, be able to play Heart and Soul on the piano, Heart and
Yeah.
Soul, like it just, you're ready. And,
Mhm.
you could do multiplication and division without too
Mhm.
many problems. But
Right.
then as an upper intermediate, you're still regularly attending mediumship
Mhm.
circles.
Yeah.
You're very much getting into that solid trust with spirit. And there are other elements as well, but I'd love to hear what you say first.
Yeah, so I find with the upper intermediate that you can get into a place of it being able to connect with spirit quicker. Like it
Mhm.
just seems to like you said, it's like in the beginning, a lot of times, or maybe even like lower intermediate, like people feel like they have to sit in meditation for half an hour, or they have to really prepare themselves mentally and everything for an extended amount of time. And they feel, oh, I haven't sat for 20 minutes by myself, so I can't do this. I'm like, well, typically around it's very much like muscle memory.
Yes.
So in the upper intermediate, you should be able to just take a moment of be able to take a breath and just get centered, and within like a few moments or even just like 30 seconds to be able to then step into a link and then begin to connect and bring the communication through. So you're getting a bit more confident. You're
Mhm.
getting more confident in your connection with spirit. You're starting to really be clear about the when recognizing that it's happening, and also you may not have nearly as many double links coming in. I know that lower intermediate, you might be like, I feel like I've got 2 or 3 people all together. Then there's a little bit less of that happening in the upper intermediate level. So
Yeah, they're able to have that clarity of, well, hold on, wait your turn, and then yeah,
exactly.
and to your point of this is such a process of calibrating yourself energetically to spirit.
Yeah.
And you, as you said, muscle memory, it's like lifting weights, only
Yeah.
it's energy.
Yes,
And we have
exactly.
to get used to working in that sort of way. Initially you're like, there's no way I can do this exercise routine. And by the time you're upper intermediate, you're like, I got this. I can link
Mhm.
quickly. I have such a trust with spirit. It's pretty solid at that
Yeah.
point when you're an upper intermediate. And in my opinion, as an upper intermediate, you must be able to establish and sustain a link with spirit and have a
Mhm.
clear understanding of how you receive evidence. And at that point, you must be willing to move out of like your comfort zone about things and really try to push and take your mediumship abilities to new heights and depths and be of that mindset about it. You're also gaining momentum in your learning. You're really
Mhm.
seeking accuracy, strong evidence. You're excited to see what's over the horizon. Like
Mhm.
those are elements that I've noticed with upper intermediate students.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like
And
to add about that particular level?
yeah, and I've noticed around that level as well that people are they have a much deeper understanding of what they don't know.
Sure,
Like
sure.
they recognize where their blank spots are in their development, and they go and
Mhm.
they just know. Whereas in the other levels, they might not know just yet. They know, they kind of know, but you really have a deeper understanding. Like, okay, I know where my my weaknesses are with my connection with spirit, and this is where I need to go to work on it. Things like that. So there's an awareness there.
There is, and they start to be more aware of checking in, confirmation,
Yeah.
taking a little bit of the risks of putting information out there. But again,
Mhm.
you've been developing that trust with spirit, and it starts to become more finely tuned. And
Mhm.
you could say, I really want to get this aspect of my mediumship up level
Yeah.
this, up level that. And as you
Mhm.
say, start to fill in the gaps
Yeah.
for it.
Mhm.
And the way I think about upper intermediate, it's almost like they're starting to want to study the masters. If this was art, they'd be like, oh my goodness, look at the light of Rembrandt. Do you see what
Mhm.
Rubens has done with the
Yeah.
symbols of this? And you're connecting dots, and it's Da Vinci Code level that you
Yeah.
start to get into this
Yeah.
Well, like there's such a discovery of this and a joy in watching someone else have such a successful link, and you start to
Yeah,
go, I think I want to work that way too.
yeah.
That you can see the solid, compassionate link that's happening, and you
Mhm,
want to build toward that.
mhm.
And in terms of like piano and music, you're really starting to go, oh my gosh, I'm starting to feel like I could jam with some other people. Like there's this like real nice connection that you're having with spirit.
Yeah,
And it's really beautiful to see this evolve. And
yeah.
you've gone past basic math at this point. You're really understanding how to carry on conversations with spirit. And that leads us into the advanced level.
Mhm,
And there is a little bit of, in my opinion, a blur between the upper
mhm.
level, intermediate, and
Yeah.
advanced. There's a little bit of a line that starts to blur in there. But let's start off with what your thoughts are about the advanced level.
I find that typically when people get to the advanced level, they either have their own practice at this point, they're working regularly with spirit, either not only in circle, but they may also be working one-to-one with people outside, more of as a practice, and not practice, but a they might have their own office, or they might be working out of the local church or something. But there's another level here where they're really bringing it more to people outside their circle, outside of their development circle. So I found that a lot. Not all the time, though. Some people can be at the advanced level and never ever actually have a private appointment with anybody and just work in circle. There's also, I feel like, there's a sense of confidence that tends to be a bit more unshakable when you get to the advanced level. That you don't get so attached to if something necessarily doesn't go well with a link, because we're starting to recognize that there's so much more to the picture here about why obviously we have an idea of what an ideal link and message would be, and we always strive for that. But there's also recognition that sometimes that when someone comes to us for a private reading, that may not be what they need, and not to have an advanced level should be confident enough. And I know some of these aspects can be in the intermediate level as well, but there's the fact that we recognize that maybe a mediumship reading is not what they need, and we let that go and not be too attached to making it work.
Mhm.
Because I've seen that occasionally from time to time, and people, I just, whatever reason, I felt like it wasn't working, but also there was a recognition that they didn't need a mediumship reading. They needed something else. They need
Mhm.
a grief counselor. They need something else other than a mediumship reading, and not letting our um, need to have to think that this is the only thing that's available to people, and the only thing that's going to help people, and recognizing that this is not what I have to offer, is not what you need right now, and being okay with that, and then moving them on to somebody else that you trust, that help them through whatever it is that they're working with, that they thought they could get from a mediumship reading. So
Mhm.
there's that's one tiny aspect of I noticed that with advanced mediums is we're not too attached to having be the one to be able to do this for people, and also
Mhm.
to maybe refer another medium that may be more in line with what that person needs as well.
Mhm.
We all, it's a recognition of what our, ideally it'd be great if we could connect to every type of person on the other side, everybody, every different experience on the other side, all of these things. But I know there's some people who are really, really good with connecting with children. And I know some people who are really, really good with connecting with, older people, parents, or whatever, tragic passings. We all have our little pockets of knowledge and pockets of connection, that we thrive a little bit more as mediums if we're really honest with ourselves. And if I'm feeling like, you know what, I know a medium for you that can really knows the language of the person that you want to speak with, and I'm going to refer them to you to them. So it's a recognition of what we can and cannot do, and where our weaknesses are, and being okay with other people taking on that particular connection instead of us. So that, yeah, so it's just it's a letting go of ego and being okay with being and recognizing we're not perfect beings, you know. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think that's what an advanced student is really focusing in on. And I would say that by the time they're an upper advanced, that has really started to solidify with people.
Yeah.
If they're lower advanced, then they're starting to understand that distinction of
Yeah.
really what is that sitter's soul needs.
Exactly.
And really having that intuitive sense, but also connecting in with spirit to say, okay, this is what this person needs right now. And so
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up today. I think it's a really important distinction of a person who is working in the advanced student range. And I would say also that an advanced student, by the time you are in the advanced student range, you should have fine-tuned your dominant clairs, be able to work in a lot of those kind of formats productively, and know how to go directly to a message recipient with accurate evidence from a spirit communicator. By the time you're an advanced student, you should be saying, I need to come to you with a message if you are doing public mediumship, so that you have that level of clarity within yourself and with your team, and that you're confident. And by the time you're an advanced student, you should be confident in checking in with a sitter, a recipient, getting that yes, no, I don't know, getting those things, and having a really established rapport with your spirit team. And when you're in that space of the advanced student, you've gotten to a place where you're like, I trust spirit implicitly, and you have developed your accuracy. You've also, by that point, fine-tuned, or you're in the process of really getting this fine-tuned as an advanced student in that level, the public persona, so that you can step in to having that energy. It's an aspect of what you do as a medium, even if you've been an introvert all your life, that you develop. Well, how do you want to interface with the public? Because typically you're, as an advanced student, you're going to be putting yourself out there, especially as you mentioned, Laura, helping out with church services. If you're helping out with fundraisers, you're doing mini readings for the church.
Yeah.
Having to expand beyond what would be considered the development circle. And it's time for you to start doing those, giving that service to the church and helping people in loving service to connect with their loved ones in spirit. I also find that that's a time where, as I said, that with the upper level intermediate, is that they've really been able to sustain a strong link with spirit communicators, and they're really willing to move out of their comfort zone. I find some advanced students want to stay in their little comfort zone a little bit, kind of like
It's human nature, but we can't grow there though.
Exactly. So you really have to be willing to do the work. If you're an advanced student level, you're willing to do the work, you're willing to adapt, you're interested in serving. And I feel like it's a good time as you're moving through that lower advanced level, that you're starting to go, okay, how can I put this into practice out there in the world? Maybe I go to psychic fairs and I'm going to get hundreds of readings under my belt working with the general public, so that I have a real strong sense of what that is, because you've grown in a church environment or with a strong mediumship mentor in a mediumship circle, and you've really honed this to such an extent that now you have to hold the energy with people you don't know. Now you have to hold the energy with absolute strangers. And so as an advanced student, you should be willing, able, open to developing things on that level. And they're also starting to shift that focus, many of them, onto fine-tuning for a professional capacity, because a professional medium is different from just being an advanced medium student. So,
absolutely.
Because as an advanced, you're seeking certification, or
Mhm.
you're studying with certain mediumship mentors, you're really practicing, improving, and then you're wanting to pop. Some of them will want to pop into being a professional medium. So, anything else about the advanced level before we talk about professional mediumship level?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we pretty much covered it, but you're right. And to get to that point, and like you mentioned, doing psychic fairs, doing dozens and dozens of readings every weekend. Like I know we both probably have been there. And I remember that was something that really helped me to hone my skills, because you got 15 minutes to connect and make this happen. And so there's a lot of people who want to go from circle directly to professional. And it's like,
It's
get
not
to
a
those psychic
choice.
fairs. Yeah.
No, it's not
Mhm.
energetically. You need to be working to sustain the energy. So
Exactly.
because every time you connect with spirit, it's a little bit of an energy hit. And
Yeah.
and your client and your sitter you're holding, there's a lot of intense stuff that's happening
Exactly.
happening with you and within that bubble that you're creating, that sacred
Mhm.
space. I You're having to carry people energetically, emotionally through things.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you've got to be able to do the heavy work
Yeah.
by
Exactly.
them.
And so by doing things like psychic fairs or very short readings over and over and over again, you're learning to not only understand, it's building a muscle, also
Mhm.
being able to hold space for yourself
Mhm.
and recognizing your own boundaries with what you can energetically do in one day,
Yeah.
and also be able to hold space for the person you're reading for, and then do it again 20 minutes or 15 minutes later, like over and over and over again. It's like
It can be
it's like
grueling, if you haven't
at
done
boot
all that
camp.
work initially, it will be grueling, and
Yeah,
you also wanna pass it through your own soul and with your spirit team, like, am I
yeah,
energetically ready, and do I have the capacity to do these things?
exactly.
And many people are having to balance family issues and,
Yeah,
other life things that are going on at the same time, and I do
good
tell
point.
people that it's important that you don't quit your day job
Yes. Oh,
initially
that's
at
such a
all,
good point. Such a good point.
because
Yeah,
sometimes they're just like, "I love it. I love what I'm doing, and this is so great, and I feel so good, and I don't like my other job," and blah, 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 blah. But that's bringing in the money. That's a
right.
resource
Yeah,
for them, and I get it, but being able to do left brain work while you're learning to do the intensity of right brain work is
yes,
balancing and is grounding to you because we don't
exactly.
want you going woo woo.
Yes. Exactly, that's such a good point, and I still have my day job, and it's a admin work that I do, and that's very left brain for me, and so I got the left brain, right brain thing going on, and it's very balancing for me. I have a very busy life. However, it grounds me. It keeps me on the side of, recognizing I'm still a human being, and keeps me, I'm not fully into the woo woo. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I'm speaking from the point of view of someone. I have been a full-time professional medium
Mhm.
for about 25 years now.
Yeah,
And you want to get this right, correct, energetically at the beginning so that you can sustain this. This is not about making money. This is not about any of those things.
exactly.
Although I
Mhm.
absolutely agree with people being paid for their time, for their energy, for the education that they're putting forward to really
Exactly.
fine tune their mediumship skills. But you need to be able to set that balance, that harmony from the very get-go. So
Mhm.
it's not about quantity, it's about quality. But
Yes.
when you do psychic fairs, it is an intense energy, and you might not be able to do much before or after because you're trying to
Mhm.
gear up and then you're trying to decompress after all that
Yeah.
energy that's just flowed through you and
Mhm.
around you. And you're also having to maintain focus in a place that can be loud,
Yeah. Always is, typically. Yeah.
very loud. And I would say that it does help you build a client base, especially if you are good. if you have fine-tuned this to such an extent that you can really hold this well. And that's what we want for you. We want you as a professional medium, if that's what your goal is, or maybe that's where you're already at. We want a professional who is confident, very consistent. What does very consistent mean? That you consistently connect with people's loved ones in spirit.
Yeah.
That it's not like, I got it this time, but I didn't get that time. We want you to get to such a point where you're there, and in the career of your mediumship as a professional medium, that maybe on one hand you had to turn people away. I'm just trying to put you at what you need to be before you put shingle out, because you want you to be accurate to a high level, a high degree, and be able to compassionately interface with a client or sitter.
Exactly.
What else would you like to add with that?
Oh, we covered so much. Yeah. So another thing, just to kind of go with the don't quit your day job thing. And I've seen time and time again where people have quit their day job wanting to do this full time, and they don't have the client base. They haven't done the psychic fairs. They haven't, because that's how I built my client base, was psychic fair to psychic fair to psychic fair, and also build those muscles. But they were so worried about finances that they did not have the energy to be fully present for their client or mediumship clients. And so you got to really balance this out and recognize when that could possibly happen. Because if you're worried about where your next meal's coming from, you can't fully be mentally present for this person that's looking for you to who may be grieving and is looking to connect with their loved ones. So it's a fine, delicate balance. And I understand at some point you just know when the time comes to make the shift, then you do it. Personally, I could quit my day job right now. I choose not to, because that's how my brain works. I like the balance of both, and it keeps me very, very grounded. So it works for me. It may not work for everybody, but it does work for me. So,
that's very true. And for me, my family is very balancing, very grounding. Wife, mother, chief cook, and bottle washer right here. So that's how it is. What's going to happen when you spiritually unfold? You're still going to chop wood, carry water. So those are all aspects of what we have to do. And it's such a joy to help people connect with their loved ones in spirit, but it's not all you do. And it shouldn't be all you do, because when you look back on your life, yes, you may have helped so many people, but you want to make sure that your own inner circle has felt that connection with you too, in a very deep and loving way. So don't leave them in the dust. I've seen some mediums do that, especially because they were wanting to feel special. This is never, I encourage you, don't chase celebrity. Don't chase fame. In fact, I eschew it myself. So they had, when this idea of even doing the show was pitched to me, I was like, I don't know. I don't think I want to be on camera. No.
Yeah.
And look at me. You're
I get that completely. Yeah. But here we are.
Here we are. And so, but I would say that please, if you want to go professional, don't rush those stages. Don't rush those levels that we've just been talking about. Get hundreds of readings under your belt. If you do psychic fairs, and you're a medium, make sure it says medium, because I will tell you, long ago when I used to do them, that's what it would have on my sign, Willa White medium. And I had so many more people signing up at my table. People would call in advance to book their session in advance before they would come to the psychic fair. So they'd have their time slot. They'd prepay everything before I even got there, because that's what they really needed. They wanted a good quality medium. And so there is definitely a need, a call for that, even above psychic work. No offense, because there were tarot card readers, and there were others that were there. But it's the mediums that they would flock to the most. And so if you are a high quality medium, that is what can happen. And it is because you're going to put the effort into it, the practice into it. And remember that you're also not wanting to necessarily compare yourself to other people. Because I've noticed in the intermediate level, even at the beginner level, they're like, oh, they could do so much more. And intermediate level, they start to go, well, so-and-so is advancing more quickly than me. And they start
What am
to,
I doing wrong? All these things. Yeah.
yeah.
Letting it go. Yeah.
And you're going to progress at your own individual rate. And
Yes.
you can't rush that process because, again, you have other things that you're having to work on other than just your mediumship to get your clarity. And some other thoughts about this, because I've been relating this to painting, when you look at Degas, he did the ballerina, the art, he was able to bring such clarity to the grittiness of being a ballerina. And he never stood in the room with them, but he could understand it to such a level or degree. It looks in his paintings as if he was in the corner of the room of painting that ballerina as she's doing that movement. When you get to a professional level, that's what you want to really be getting into, that place, bring into that emotional. And I'm not saying that every reading is going to be like the sculpture of David, but it's very much a recognition that when, it's what I'm aiming for. I don't always hit it.
It's the ideal.
Michelangelo was like, I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set him free. Yeah. And that sort of happens in a reading. There's just this magical, wonderful thing that can emerge as you're working your way through the evidence and getting the confirmation. And all of a sudden, there's this beautiful, beautiful sculpture of love that is the essence of that spirit communicator. And you can really see what used to be just stone be something so beautiful and a true gift for a client and for a message recipient.
Yeah.
So any last thoughts you'd like to share about these things?
Well, you made a good point. Like not every reading is going to be a Rembrandt. Not every reading is going to be the Statue of David, so you're right. So keep that in mind. We have an ideal of what, it could be. But just to know that sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, I just wanted to check in with my mom. That's right.
I just wanted to say hi.
And then some are so deeply moving that we end up crying after we're done too. That's like, they can be so deeply moving. So there's such a variation here of different types of readings. And not every reading has to be this really deep emotional experience. It's lovely when it is, but sometimes, like you said, it's just like, hi, Mom. I just wanted to say hi to my mom. I just love hanging out with her for half an hour. It's wonderful. That kind of thing.
That's right. So, I mean, it could be Elvis on Velvet, or it could be Norman Rockwell, where you just feel like Norman Rockwell, you're in the vignette of it all. But sometimes it's just Elvis on Velvet.
Exactly. So, and also, and not to downplay, I know what the topic is mediumship, but not to downplay the importance of a psychic connection from time to time when people need that guidance, and to recognize when, and this is another thing that the professional advance in professional level is recognizing, and I think I alluded to before, is when they're coming for one specific thing, but you're recognizing that they need something different, either with somebody else, another professional, different type of professional, or they really need more intuitive or psychic advice from you rather than a mediumship reading. So, and to be okay, and that can be just as important sometimes, is to develop that psychic connection and awareness of people too. So anything can help to support that would be really good. That kind of develop. Yeah.
So when you're when you're a student and you're out there and you're looking at the courses that are offered, just be aware of when they have those level designations. Those are pretty much fast and loose what this means for you. So please, if you're a beginner, don't sign up for an advanced class or an upper intermediate class. Please don't do that to yourself. Because it's not helpful. But I will say, in my case, for my mediumship circle, which I do on Monday evenings, and in that I allow all levels. Good. Now, some people will be like, "Why?" Well, that's how I was raised. On development circles where all levels were present.
One room schoolhouse.
And that's what I refer to it as a one room schoolhouse. And we have the benefit in that place of beginners are then not paired with a beginner, and they're looking at each other going, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know what to do? I don't know.
Right.
You're paired with someone, in my classes at least, with someone who's been there a while, that has a sense of how to
Yeah.
connect with spirit, that's encouraging and compassionate and wants
Right.
to see you succeed, and is actually thrilled to see a new person because they can practice with a complete stranger, and they're just like,
They
oh,
haven't read before.
it's perfect guinea pig. And so it all sort of works out, that as a person is there to support others that are coming in on those levels, or if they're more advanced, and they can help an intermediate and maybe tweak, it's they learn by the teaching of it too.
Yeah,
It's
they do.
by being
Absolutely.
paired up.
Mhm.
And so that's what I have found so valuable, and what I really enjoy in my particular classes.
Mhm.
But you need to be looking, when you're going to sign up for these things, are all levels welcome?
Mhm.
Is this a closed circle and only select students are allowed to be part of it? You need to read the distinctions of this, because some
Yeah.
people only offer what are known as progressive circles. You have to
Mhm.
be a certain level to be in those circles.
Yeah.
And again, do yourself a favor and read. Read those things and
And,
get to know your mentor that way. Go ahead.
and if you happen to end up in a class that, like I had this happen where someone felt like they were a little bit over their head when they got into the class, but they were already committed. And they're like, should I just leave it? I'm like, stay, stay. If you just happen to end up in a class that's just a little bit above your head, just take notes, even if you don't fully understand what's being spoken or you haven't had that experience yet. Because I promise you, at some point it will click. And just speaking from my own experience, because there was times when I was first learning, I inadvertently ended up in an intermediate class, right? But I was a baby medium. And I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about, but I'm going to write this down. And then a couple of years go by, I'm like, oh, that's what they were talking about. This is what they were referring to. So don't be nervous about, do I belong here, if you happen to end up in those circumstances, but just take notes and pay attention and soak up what you can. That's all I can say. But it's I find it's
If you
helpful.
cannot have a mistake, that would be good too, just from your own standpoint, so you don't feel so overwhelmed. But as she said,
Right.
it's really important that even if you attend a circle that's a regular development
Mhm.
circle, and you come into that environment, and you're like, well, other people have been here before, that's okay.
Yeah.
That some of the things you're going to learn are not necessarily for that particular evening or class. It's there for you to then apply another time when you have advanced to that
Yeah.
level. And so
Yeah.
that's what I tell the people in my one room schoolhouse, is that this is where we want, what you can focus on tonight if you're at this level. But if you're more advanced and you want to push yourself, this is where you can go.
Yeah.
And the beginners are also kind of perking up, thinking, oh, maybe I'll try that another time when it's
Yeah.
energetically correct for me to
Exactly.
do
You don't wanna
so.
get discouraged. You don't wanna get discouraged,
Don't make
and
yourself get
that's
discouraged about
mhm,
this.
right, and that's, and I can understand that too, just and the one last thing is just, be curious about everything. Just be
Mhm.
fascinated by this, and just be super curious about what's possible, because when you come from like, I can't do this, or if you struggle with a link, when we struggle with a link in class, that's where you learn the most. So
Absolutely.
be okay with that, and to be comfortable with the uncomfortable sometimes, and so that you can learn, and it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
It is worth it. And so many times, if a person belly flops in the pool, I really don't think that that's a bad thing. I feel
I
like
don't
they're going
either.
to
Yeah,
learn. They're going to learn. Do you realize those divers, when it's off the high dive, they have had to do this over and over again. They've had so many splats, so many,
yeah,
that would have taken points off until they get the perfect swan dive. And they
right.
still have to, even when they get to that level, keep perfecting the art.
Yeah,
And so it's a conscious, constant process that you're in. There's
mhm,
always something more to learn and grow and be.
yeah.
And you'll learn the stove is hot about certain things. It
Yeah,
is. They really do help a student to learn, uh,
yeah,
and to say, okay, I'm going to adapt. Again, remain flexible in your learning. We want to
yes,
get the neuro programming switched over in a particular way, and it takes
Yes,
time.
it does. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, my goodness. This has been great, Laura. I really appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on the show today
Really
to
enjoyed it.
chat with me and to help educate our viewers today about the various levels for
Mhm.
mediumship students, so that people can feel a bit more comfortable about their learning,
Yeah,
and their pace, and
exactly. That's
what
a good point.
their evolution, and
It's not a straight shot. That's
it's
the thing. It is a meandering road up and around the mountain.
it's
Um,
true.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for being on the show today. Always
Thank
glad
you.
to have you, and look forward to another time with you in the future. Please
Okay.
join me, everyone, next week for another Great Wednesdays with Willa show. I'll have Tom Kratzley as my guest. And please visit Laura Lister's website, and you can find more information about her. You can visit my website. I have my online classes. My February video learning series is available for instant viewing now, which has coping strategies for empaths, symbol interpretation, and connecting with your spiritual support team. So they have videos and handouts and everything galore. So, all right, everyone, have a great week. Lots of love to you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.